Hey, it's Jeremy Kirkland, and you're listening to Blamo. If you're new here, this is a podcast exploring the world of fashion with the people who shape it. We are nearing the end of Season 10, but this week's episode is one of my faves. Actor and comedian Heidi Gardner. Well, first off, I've always been a huge fan of Saturday Night Live and have loved every second of Heidi's meteoric rise. From her boxer's girlfriend character to the teen film critic to John Michael Wozniak from The Last Dance, you name it, she's crushed it. But let's be real, something I've loved even more is how wild and loud her style is. Heidi and I talk about growing up in Kansas City, joining the Groundlings, LA versus New York City style, digging for vintage on Etsy, making clothes with puffy paint, and getting fits off. It's a pod for the ages. Here we go. Thank you for making the time to make this work. Where are you right now? Are you in New York?
I'm in New York, yep.
Okay. Man, you got a cool place with cool art.
Thank you.
Have you been conscious, like, as an aside, have you been conscious about, like, what your background is in, like, the Zoom era?
Not really. Although I will say that I used to have a big painting back there because it's not that it's a big wall, but it was kind of just a big for a New York apartment wall. And I had a very loud painting and it made me hate it. Like, ooh. So I got rid of that. I was like, I think I just need a kind of simple framed prints.
Because I think at one point, did you do SNL from your house?
I did, but it was in a different apartment. I've moved since then.
But
I definitely did SNL from home.
You got to be one of the only people in history, other than the other cast, that's had to do a show from home.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez Louise.
Psycho.
Anyway, I definitely want to talk about you, your podcast, but more importantly, like clothes and like fashion. It's been interesting to see, and I don't know if this is true or not, but like from a lot of people that know you, they know you just from the show, right? Mm-hmm. But like your fashion has been like getting like louder and louder and like maybe more yourself. But I'm kind of curious about like how you started to get into clothes.
Sure. Yeah. I think I was always as a kid into clothes because I had a very fashionable, free mom in the 80s that I could like watch her get ready and also play dress up in her closet and just aspire to be. So I know that.
Because you're in Kansas City, right?
Yeah, in Kansas City. So I know I was always like intrigued by clothes and intrigued by her closet and her friends. She used to have this girl group. They were called Girls Night Out, Let's Have Fun Club. And they would like go out on the town. Like I just found this old picture of them with like, sunglasses. All of them had on sunglasses at night, big blazers. They just looked fabulous. But they would also do these, instead of Tupperware parties, they would do lingerie parties where like a lingerie saleswoman would come to the house with like a rack of lingerie. And my parents were divorced. And so when I was with my mom, like I got drug along to everything. So I was drug along to these lingerie parties and I would watch these like runway of like fabulous 80s women in like long negligee gowns and ostrich feather shoes and everything. So that's all to say, when I was little, clothes were like, oh my gosh. And then when I was a teenager, I really got into, I was super, maybe it was like when Smashing Pumpkins got big in like the 1979 video or something.
Did you have a Zero shirt?
So I did not have a Zero shirt, but I was at the concert and like wanted the Zero shirt and like did not have the money to buy the Zero shirt. And I've been on Etsy in the last 2 years looking for a Zero shirt.
Those shirts are like $700.
I know. I know. And in my opinion, like fully worth it, but I can't pull the trigger, but I know the Zero shirt. So that's all to say though, there was something about that time and my older brother and his friend, Casey, this girl, where it was like, I don't know, the 70s were like kind of coming back. Just bell bottoms were big again.
Yeah.
And
Jinkos.
Yes. And so I learned a little bit about vintage during that time, which was basically just that I could go to thrift stores and find cool vintage t-shirts. So got into that. But I will say that when I moved to LA, I feel like my fashion just like hit a wall of I would have never said this at the time in LA because I wasn't aware of it, but I think there's like the East Side and the West Side. I was always like an East Sider, and I think I was trying to conform to what I thought that was, which while I was there was kind of like minimalist, like Echo Park, and which is like a very cool look. And I like that a lot. And I definitely wasn't West Hollywood. And so I think I was just trying to fit in there. And I was really scared of things like, not that I even wear hats now, but I feel like when you're in LA and you wear a hat, like someone's like, oh, you're wearing a hat. Like they're very, or like, oh, that's a bright color. Like you're always called out for things. And so I think I was like perpetually insecure there. I think I would take some risks for sure, but I was always just like ready for the comment. Like, what's it going to be? What's someone going to say? I mean, I remember I wore a bandana around my neck one time and like a dear friend, I love her. Yeah. But she was like, are you a golden retriever? And I was like, see, this is why I can't do this stuff. Like, it's too scary here.
LA, here's the thing. The good response to all this is LA fashion is in my opinion, trash. Like there's no strong identity. It's so like always going with the flow, following whatever celebrity or whatever someone wore at the time versus, in New York, I mean, I'm biased, but like you have people that are unknown that are fashion icons. And I don't feel like you have that as much, And maybe it's because everyone's in their cars and all separated in their homes, right? But like, I don't know. But shame on your friend for saying golden retriever. Bandana around the neck is a very good vibe, by the way.
And I do feel, I mean, I feel like I wasn't pulling it off because I was insecure about the choice. But yeah, no, I feel like in LA, you can walk down the street and be like, oh my God, there's all these like beautiful people, but you might not be like, oh, there's all these like really cool people. Like we're just like, I can just get a whiff that they're cool of seeing someone in New York. I was walking home last night and decided to like walk from Midtown to the West Village and like just just the amount of people that I saw that I was like, and I literally in my head thought like, they're so cool. They're so cool. What, like what's their deal? They're so cool. It was just like, I never really had that experience in LA. So that's all to say, once I got to New York, and I met my friend Shay, who's also my stylist. She helped me, I think, unlock what was always there and what was like feeling deprived. And then also the city and how much the city does not care and isn't like concerned about my hat or my bright color, I think really made me feel like I can do whatever, like I feel like, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, but it's interesting too, because like to jump back because I think we're close to the same age. And that like punk music or alternative, I'm air quoting, was kind of like, I think that influence, because I grew up in St. Louis.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. And so like for me, it was going to like Point Fest and it was seeing like the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and Incubus and all of that stuff. And it's funny to see that stuff come back now. But I feel like everyone, at least like Midwest kids, when you're trying to figure out like your identity, most of it falls into clothes or sports, and so it's like you're either a sport kid or like, did you ever get in? Was like, how much did music shape it outside of the Pumpkins? Like, what other stuff were you listening to?
Oh my gosh, I mean, I feel like I was pretty all over the place. I mean, at that time, I mean, I was definitely into grunge. I was very into Hole. Oddly enough, I remember my friend and I. This is polar opposite, but my friend Ashley and I in 7th grade got super into U2, but we went to a U2 concert, basically dressed like Courtney Love at the time, like a slip dress, like kind of goth makeup, like frazzled hair. And it was
at
just
a U2
like,
concert.
And I remember like there were so many like middle-aged or probably 30-year-olds at the concert that were just like, I don't get your girl's vibe. Like pick a lane. Like, and they were kind of just like, we don't want you. This is not you too. Like, go to a Garbage show or so, like Smashing Pumpkins, like I said.
Good taste too. Garbage, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he loved Garbage, but then Garbage would open a lot for you too.
You're right. They did. That's
Early
crazy because like Butch Vig was the drummer of Garbage, who basically made all the greatest like alternative albums at that time.
Yeah, one time in LA, I saw Butch Vig at a Coffee Bean, and it was like, I feel like I would kind of get starstruck when I would see like actors or actresses, but when I saw Butch Vig, I was like in stunned silence because I think so many of my favorite songs or just the band Garbage, I was like, he's responsible.
Did you go up to him?
everything. No.
Why not?
Because I mean, that one was like really stunned silence. It's the same with like, I've gotten a little better, but like, it's the same with athletes for me. It's like, there's something about like, I just feel like I could never be an athlete, like professional athlete or like a professional musician. So those ones to me are like untouchable. Like I just can't, they seem like superheroes.
Did it sink in that you're a celebrity now though?
Absolutely not. I really can't. I think I wish that I could think of myself in that way. I don't know if it might, bring some sort of good things to my world. Or a confidence, but I just can't do it. Can't do it.
I mean, I think maybe it's because you're from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Serious. Paul Rudd, Sudeikis, they're all from KC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd moved to LA at when? Because you were in LA for how long? 10 years?
A little over 10 years. I think it was maybe like 11 or 12 years. But I moved in the 2000s are so hard for me to remember.
Yeah,
years.
It's all blur.
It's so blurry. It's just not as easy as 1990 something. But I think it was 2004 that I moved there. Yeah.
And you moved there to work to do hair.
Yeah, I moved out there because I was just kind of like, I'm going to do hair or makeup in the movies or costuming or whatever I could find like in that arena.
Yeah. And obviously you were doing that for a while and then started, what brought you to improv classes? Because that's kind of like where you started popping, right?
Yeah, I made a friend who was in the Groundlings and she was like, you should come. And I'd heard of the Groundlings because also, I mean, grew up not only obsessed with music, but like SNL, pop culture, movies, TV, everything. Every square inch of my childhood or teenage bedroom was like a picture from Entertainment Weekly or an Oscar ad or Variety, whatever.
Did you read Teen Beat?
I didn't really. I mean, I read Teen Beat
like JTT.
So I was like never into JTT, but I did read Teen Beat like New Kids on the Block times but for some reason like JTT. Andrew Keegan, Devin Saw, like, did not do it for me.
Wow. Okay. Go ahead.
I think
That's
they were
fine.
like too much of Pretty Boys or something. I don't know if I might not have been into the long hair at the time. I don't know why.
I think they all had long Kurt Cobain hair with undercuts.
Yes.
That was
exactly.
Okay. Anyway.
So always obsessed with that. So I had heard of the Groundlings. So I made this friend. She's in the Groundlings. And it's like, you should come see a show tonight. So I go to the improv show. Her and her boyfriend were in it. They were both Groundlings. And I was like, oh my God, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. But my first thought was just, oh, this is so cool. Now I have something that when like someone's visiting LA, I can take them to and be like, isn't this like amazing? You'd never see this in Missouri, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then my friend Rachel was like, well, if you thought the improv show was fun, you should come on Saturday night. We're doing like a sketch show. And it's like kind of a mini SNL. It's like almost 2 hours long, a bunch of sketches. And so I was like, okay, definitely, I'll come to that. And then I saw that and I was like, well, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And also Melissa McCarthy was still in the Groundlings at that time.
Oh, shit.
This is like 6 months before Bridesmaids. And she was just a phenom. It was like, why isn't this woman the biggest celebrity in the world? And then Bridesmaids came out and she was. So it's all to say, I was just kind of blown away, but I didn't know what to do with my blown awayness other than be blown away. And my friend Rachel was like, you should take a class. And I was just like,
typical improv kid. They're all like, come take a class.
Yeah, I know. Some sort of cult. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, at that time, she was like, you always leave me these like 4-minute voicemails, like in character as someone, like they're very funny. I think you would be good at improv. And I was like, okay, but I've never acted. All to say, like, I got up the guts to take the class. I had a few other people, including my older brother, be like, I've been waiting for you our whole lives to take like a comedy class. Go do it. And he also paid for the class.
Hey, there you go.
And so yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
And you were in Groundlings for how long?
I was in Groundlings for, well, I probably took classes from like 2010 to, I got into the Sunday Company in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, maybe I got, no, I got into the Sunday Company maybe in 2014. I became a groundling in 2015. And then
That's quick.
yeah. And there's sometimes where you have like long wait periods in between classes at groundlings. So like I'd go do a class at UCB or like some other improv theater in LA or a sketch class just to like do something.
And there was no point to kind of, in the sense, like, this wasn't like, oh, I'm doing this so I can be an actress or actor, whatever. Like,
yeah. In the beginning, it was kind of cool. I love this. And I wish that I could get back to this in my life now because the stakes would just be lower. Like I was, and it sounds cheesy, but I was genuinely just following my bliss. I was taking these improv classes that were fun. There was a part of me that was like coming out that like had always been there. Like I remember improvising with like my best friend in our college dorm room. Like I would do full on bits, like, and she would just play along with me. And I didn't know what I was doing. It was never like, she was like, okay, enough with the improv. But, and so I would have people in my life that just would play along with me. So it's all to say, once I started taking classes, I'm like, oh, I get to be this character or do this voice. And this is so cool. But I didn't understand the levels of groundlings. I didn't know that there was a Sunday Company. I knew that I had made that friend who was a groundling, but I just thought she got deemed a groundling. Like I didn't understand.
right.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. Later on, I figured out how it all worked. And then I was like, oh, I want that. I want to be in Sunday Company. I want to be a groundling. And suddenly the stakes are high and the pressure's on. But in the beginning, it really was just like, oh, this is fun. It's making me less shy. I like it.
Were you like, because, I have tons of friends that are in the improv scene, and a few of them have taken it really serious in the sense that they're like building their character on stage and off stage. And a lot of it is through clothes. Like a friend of mine is like, hey, like I'm doing this thing. Like I'm laughing. He's like, I need my off stage, like look, like what is my look? Were you thinking about any of that stuff? Like, or were you just like, what the hell? Like
I definitely wasn't necessarily thinking about my offstage look, but when I was making a character, like for a sketch, like absolutely, like the wig and the clothes and the sourcing of the clothes for certain characters was a huge deal to me. Like, I mean, I even remember when I got SNL, there's 2 wigs that I had from Groundlings that are just like my favorite wigs. And they were the only 2 that I packed with me to take to New York. Cause I was like, just in case like SNL can't do this one. Or like and like, these are the most talented hairstylists in the world and wig artists. And these wigs are like pretty basic. I mean, one of them is basically just like Jim Carrey bowl cut in Dumb and Dumber. But but there's something about when I put that one on and this other one about the way I feel as the character that I'm just like, so clothes and hair can be so transportive and make me feel so much, obviously like a different person that I feel way more confident to perform.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy seeing how much, I mean, it sounds stupid now, but like seeing how much that really changes not only how everyone else perceives you, but more importantly, how you perceive yourself. Mm-hmm. When, like, I mean, when I would dress people for red carpet tours or whatever, and most of the time, like when I'd meet up with them, it was like jeans and a t-shirt. And then we'd be like, oh, look, here's a suit for this. Here's a look for this. And like, you'd see how, I mean, it helps to have 10,000 cameras flashing at you to kind of like remind you that there's a reason that you need to be there. But you'd see how that just changes how they feel about themselves in that whole situation.
Totally.
Were you getting all your vintage from the Midwest?
It's funny because I was getting some of it from the Midwest. I mean, some of my favorite things are things that
affordable vintage. I'll be
exactly.
clear. Excuse me. Sorry.
I know. I mean, like, yeah, LA is basically impossible for vintage. I mean, people sometimes still ask me like, I mean, you were in LA, what were your favorite vintage spots? And I'm like, impossible. It was too expensive, especially on a budget of like, I spend all my money on wigs and clothes for like half-ass sketches. So, I mean, I did find my best ever piece of clothing at an out of the closet in Atwater Village when I was shopping for a costume. And it's just an old Touchstone Pictures sweatshirt from like the 80s. And it's my favorite thing ever. And it might as well, it's like my Smashing Pumpkins Zero shirt. I'm like, I keep on like searching for it on Etsy because I'm like, this thing is going to be $700. And like, I mean, I can't find another one. So I'm like, oh, it is pretty rare. But yeah, I barely found good vintage in LA. I've got a store here that I love, LeGrand Strip. It's in Brooklyn. That's like really fun and girly. It makes me feel like being in my mom's closet.
Did you go to Stella Dallas? That's a good spot.
No. Where's that?
Williamsburg.
Okay.
That is one of the best affordable vintage in the city that I think is for men and women. Otherwise, you have like Crowley Vintage, which is Sean Crowley. He's in Dumbo. He's been on the pod, and he was he ran all of Ralph Lauren's ties and accessories for a long time. Wow. And a lot of his stuff is kind of, it's almost period like.
Yeah.
Like there's a good portion of the Marvelous Miss Maisel show that's all Crowley stuff.
Okay. I had a friend at work, my friend Jeff Blake. He just bought like a 1920 suit in Dumbo, and I'm guessing it's gotta be.
It's gotta be from Sean. Yeah. So he's got stuff. Then a buddy of mine, there's Front General, which is pretty good vintage.
So
and
really
then
good.
My friend Brian Davis, who was in Red Hook and now he's in Yonkers area, and his stuff is more menswear, but it's kind of like Americana classic. And it's not like you're going to see 10,000 pairs of jeans, but you will see like here's the right sizes and the right ones that don't have holes in the wrong places. But you're paying for it. It's not.
Yeah.
But if you're in the Midwest, it's cheap.
It's cheap. People don't totally know what they have, and they're ready to get rid of it. And lucky for us, they've hung on to it a long time, and they're finally just like, oh, I don't want this. Yeah, I always go back to the River Market Antique Mall in the downtown Kansas City.
Good shop.
Yeah, they also have like really good, just like Kansas City specific vintage, like our old racetrack, the Greyhounds. Like I found like a really cool like not a tote bag, but a gym bag from there. That's like, I didn't buy it. I should. I'm acting like it's mine because I can't stop thinking about it.
You could have totally lied, and no one would have ever been any the wiser. But go ahead.
But no, you know what was like with New York? I love that like a store like Front Street General. There's like a lot of stuff. It's like impeccably curated. So you just know that basically everything you look at is going to be cool. So that feels good. You're not like just sorting through stuff. And then I do feel like, yes, sometimes the Levi's, the jeans, like can get up there in price, but it is nowhere compared to what it was in LA. I remember when like your heather gray, like raglan sweatshirt in LA a few years ago was going for like $300. And like, I never went that far, but I feel like I was conned into like maybe a $200 white sweatshirt, and I am pissed about it. And everyone was getting away with it because I know so many women that were buying them too. And it was like, well, this is the only option. I have to pay this. And like these are the sweatshirts. And I'm just like,
was it like
mad.
Champion or something? I mean,
it was like just any sweatshirt
IOU?
that felt good. It was definitely a lot of Champion, but it was like anyone that felt kind of soft, and especially that heather gray color was just like everyone was getting it.
Interesting.
And they could charge that. So I guess I don't blame them, but it still makes me a little.
This episode is sponsored by Standard & Strange, your go-to in-person or online store for rugged yet elegant wardrobe staples. Founded in 2012, what was once a tiny store in a back alley in Oakland has evolved into one of the best retailers in America. With incredible brands and more, they have everything you need and are experts in every product they sell. Yes, they can help you fit those jeans or those boots online. Believe the hype. With locations in Oakland, Santa Fe, and now New York City, Standard & Strange has the deepest selection of the real McCoys around. If you want goods that go way beyond just reproductions of the most iconic pieces from the 20th century, the real McCoys is it. Every detail is considered down to the custom thread used in the flight jackets. And the biggest selection is at Standard & Strange. My personal favorite is their loop wheel sweats. Nice and short in the length for the classic look. Dude, if you don't have like 2 or 3, you're just missing out. So visit standardandstrange.com/blammo to learn more. And while you're there, check out their new arrivals. Standard & Strange. Own fewer, better things. Standardandstrange.com. Yeah, there's a few vintage shops around here that I've gone to, especially with furniture, because my wife and I, we went from living in a super tiny apartment in Fort Greene to like a little bit bigger place in Bay Ridge. Then we had lockdown. Then we moved here and we're like, oh, we have a house. And it's like, it's not huge, but we're like, I have an office now and there's space. And so we started getting furniture and we started going through like estate sales, and people, like I bought like a bunch of Bertoya chairs for like $100 each. And it's crazy.
Yeah. I have a friend who she's got an online vintage called Dry Vintage and on Instagram, and she does like great curated vintage, but she also works for a place where she had to go to a bunch of estate sales, and she moved from LA to Ohio, and she's finding the best shit ever in Ohio. Yeah. And so she does story sales like every week, and it's affordable. And every so often there is a piece that is so special, like, and she has to like really charge for it, but she can be reasonable because she lives in Ohio.
Yeah.
So we all benefit from the move.
You've said in the past that like you like feeling that you're from a different time when you get dressed.
Yeah.
So how much of that affects like when you put together like what you're wearing on a day-to-day basis?
I would almost say that when I'm definitely at work, I like to do that a little bit more now, because I kind of find recently that it's more simple and easy to wear just like a nice pair of jeans or slacks, trousers, whatever, with maybe a blouse, a button down that like is all kind of monochromatic. Like it makes me feel very like it just ends up looking kind of 70s or something and easy. And I just wear the same pair of white vintage boots every day. And that's basically only because like, I will watch clips of like Linda Gray from Dallas, like at her home in the 70s doing an interview about, the best show. And I saw her wear like brown on brown or burgundy on brown with like a brown puffer vest over it. And I was like, she just looks effortless. And she looks so good. And it's just like cords and like a button down blouse that I know is not that like, it is nice, but it's like, it's not silk. And, and just that puffer vest. And like, she doesn't even have gold chains on, which I feel like everyone is like, which I do too, accessorizing with. She's just like bare chested and simple and like, and it looks so good and clean. So I do that a lot for work, and I feel like fresh, but like of another time. Or I didn't watch House of Gucci, but I watched the Dateline about it. And
you got the story.
Yes. And there was like an 80s picture of him where he just had like a white button down Oxford with like blue straight leg jeans and like a black belt with black and gold belt. And I mean, he had on like, the kind of aviator, just glasses. I don't have those, but just like the yellow with the blue and the black. It just looked so good and clean. And like, I recreated that outfit recently, and I walked into work and someone was like, you just have the freshest style. And I was surprised. I really was like, oh my God, you're so nice. Thank you. I do that too much to like deflect compliments. But I was like, I love that you think that is so fresh when I've basically just stolen it from like 35 years ago. Granted, I stole it from Gucci, but it's just an old look, but it's timeless. And so I like that. And I just feel like it kind of stands out because right now it just feels clean. Yeah.
I mean, that's where I think me and tons of other people really miss Tumblr. Like, you had Tumblr way back I can't believe I said way back, but like in the early aughts.
Yeah.
And that was just like some of the best inspiration boards. And at least at the time, it felt like the people that I was looking at, and this is, a buddy of mine like called this like the hashtag like menswear era, in which it was guys that were getting into suits, but it was people that were wearing suits that never needed to wear suits. But the inspiration of the suits were always based around, like people got like really into Steve McQueen and, I don't know, like Cary Grant, really basic things. Actually, funny enough, the sweater I'm wearing is this yellow sweater. It's a Cucinelli sweater that they were trying to copy the yellow sweatshirt that Steve McQueen wore in The Great Escape.
Wow.
Like that, and like every, I mean, what you're talking about is literally what every single company is trying to do.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, you're not really trying to copy a look as much as you're trying to copy people.
Yes.
At least for me. And like I've tried to do that before too, where you're like, oh, I'm gonna go wear what Steve McQueen wore, but I'm not jacked with cool hair and like boxing.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to copy the look, but I want to keep my hairstyle. I sometimes wonder, this is like my existential crisis, because every so often I'm like, oh, do I kind of wish I was born in a different time period? I'm not sure.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
But like, do you think when people were, because I do think that style in like the 70s, I mean, basically any other era than like the 90s and aughts now, but I feel like style was, to me, from what I can tell from old footage, was more cohesive. And so like, I wonder, like in the 70s, like say at the height of disco, like, would you just look around the streets and like realize like did everyone look sharp? And like, is there any way when that's happening in the time you live in to really realize it? So I yearn for that so much, because I idealize it. And I think like that's what was going on, and that everyone could tell how cool the look was. And like, when you look back at like what Times Square looked like in the 70s, and even though it was like filthy and dangerous, like it's got
I was gonna say.
Yeah. But I'm like, were people like, fuck yeah, this is so cool. So then I try to do that now, because I'm like, I cannot yearn too much to be in the past. So I try to like walk the streets. I mean, I guess that walk I had last night where I was like, oh, that person's cool and that person's cool.
Were you listening to music?
I was. Yes.
Okay,
so
that's got to affect it. Okay.
That definitely did. But it was like more current music, surprisingly.
Okay.
But I couldn't totally get the vibe that like everything is a vibe. I just feel like back then everything was a vibe, and I'm just jealous.
Well,
jealous.
This like gets into history stuff, because now, as we all have evolved thanks to the internet, it's great. You can find everything that you're looking for, more or less. But there's like little pockets, and because of the internet, we've been more insular in those pockets, right? So it's like all my friends and I that we hang out with, especially that we're older, we all like the same things. We're not, and so like everyone kind of prefers to be in a bubble, right? And so you have Rick Owens style fashion. You have Italian sort of classic menswear fashion. You have athleisure fashion now. You have people that like almost like cosplay fashion, where it's like dudes that dress, like Michael Haar, the barber, who basically only wears things that look like they're from Boardwalk Empire. Like all of that stuff, and it all exists at the same time. You didn't really have that as much, because you didn't have the access to it back then.
Right.
You couldn't like romanticize certain periods and do it. Everyone kind of looked the same. You didn't have as many places to buy clothes. You had less options. And so like that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's good or bad.
I know.
Because someone would say, well, I couldn't express myself. I had to wear this, and you might have thought I was cool, but I couldn't wear Moschino, like, Heidi Gardner or whatever, so it's like, that's
true. That's true. Pros and cons. I did see a couple walking down the street. It was in New York. I think I was in New York. I had to have been, but a couple months ago, that was like, they looked like they were straight out of Boardwalk Empire, but in the most specific way I'd ever seen in my life, because I also felt like their faces looked from the 1920s. Like, because sometimes I look back at old faces and I'm like, I don't see those faces anymore. So these people, I mean, they might have been ghosts, but I really was like, they were just the most like period people I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, I also think it was early December. So it was like New York Christmas time. And I was like, God, I want to know what your night is like. And I want to know if you are also accessing like that time period as you're walking down the street, like whatever you get to eat tonight, like is it all that period, or is it just the clothes and the look? Or are you leaning in like so hard?
If it was like Rose Callahan, after we're done, I'll send you a bunch of like people that you should check out on Instagram. Because like Rose Callahan, who's also been on the pod, she's an amazing photographer, but her and her husband have a very 1930s look at all times.
Okay.
In their home, outside of their home, at all times, they live in that era.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're awesome. They're great people.
Yeah.
But like that's what they do.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's bizarre. Anyway, I want to be conscious of your time. There's a few other like goofy questions here that we'll go through. If you were making a YouTube how-to video, what would the subject be?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is how to puffy paint a sweatshirt or a jacket or mostly sweatshirt or a jacket. I feel like I'm really good with puffy paint. And I really enjoy it. Every so often I'll just think of something. Like I always look for things that I want to wear on Etsy. Like I'll suddenly like have an idea of like, oh, I want something Roger Rabbit now, and I'll see if there's any sort of good old jacket or something. And sometimes I find it, but then I'll be like, okay, I want like Babs Bunny from Tiny Toons, and I can't find anything of hers. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to draw it on a jacket and then I'm going to puffy paint it. And I've gotten really good at puffy paint. Or like I'm a big Kansas City Chiefs fan and it's like, can't quite find the right sweatshirt I want. So I'm going to puffy paint it, which isn't that hard, but I could do a how-to at this point.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wait, you should make and sell this stuff.
I know.
I mean, it's not like you don't have time.
No, but it is such a good creative outlet. And I always say, like, there's a few things like that I like to do. I also, a few years ago, bought all these just like vintage turtlenecks that just looked good. And I just took like...
Cotton?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
White iron-on transfer letters and just wrote like LeBron, Kobe, just any Shaq, any basketball player. And it was like a way to wear a jersey, but not wear a jersey, basically. And just any sort of like DIY little, if I can't find it, then I can just make it in like a different way.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I would love to do a pop-up one day of all just that sort of shit.
Last movie you saw?
Oh, I just rewatched Whiplash.
Oh, that's out of left field.
It was really out of left field. I wanted to watch. Okay, so this is very weird. I watched the whole thing, but I really wanted to watch the last scene, just where like Neiman goes ape on the drums, and it's so weird because then I like posted it on my stories yesterday, and my brother, who's like, we grew up movie heads together, he was like, "This is insane." He was like, "I just rewatched that scene yesterday." Like the one that I posted. So I don't know why Whiplash is like in mine and my family's life right now, but something Whiplashian is 2020, I guess. Yeah.
You've worked with a bunch of different folks on SNL over the years. You're on your 6th season or 5th season?
5th season.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay. Has there been anyone that you've ever worked with that caused you to revisit works that they had made prior and take a different look at?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Well, what was really fun was the season premiere this year was Owen Wilson. And I mean, one of my biggest comedy heroes and writing heroes ever. And I feel like, every week at the show is fun and inspiring for so many different reasons. But like when it's one of your heroes, you like really want to come correct and like write them something good. So yeah, I went back and I just watched a lot of his movies or clips from his movies, especially things that I was like seeing when I was a teenager.
Did you watch Bottle Rocket?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
And I watched him in The Cable Guy, and then I got to like quote his scene in The Cable Guy to him.
He was in The Cable Guy, wasn't he? You're right.
He's so funny. And then I got to hear him say a couple of lines because he was like, "Oh yeah, I did say." He was like, "Have the eggs had a chance to hatch yet?" And I was like, "Oh my God." So that was really cool. And it was just like pure inspiration because I wanted to do the best job I could for him. But it was very fun.
Interesting.
And to also just be like, I feel like when you're a kid and you're a fan of somebody, it's just like, yeah, because they make you laugh because you just can't not like them. But like looking back with a little bit of wisdom, I'm like, yeah, this guy is undeniable. No one is like him. He's so funny. At the time, no one was doing anything like he was doing. His deliveries, it was just so specific. it was just really cool to be like, yeah, no shit. He became and is huge. Like, thank God the world works that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's had a hell of a ride too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last YouTube video you watched.
Oh my gosh. So this is funny because I do not watch a lot of YouTube. And sometimes I'm like, should I watch more YouTube? I don't know why, just because I feel like, especially kids don't watch TV and just YouTube. So I'm like,
yeah,
all right, there's got to be something on there. And so this is embarrassing because, okay, every so often I would watch YouTube to watch that show Defunct Land, which is all like documentaries about like Disney and like, so I really wish like if you had asked me even 2 days ago, it would have been Defunct Land. And I would have
can say that if you want. I promise you.
No, it was like a full-on, what I watched the other night was like a full-on like how to contour glam makeup, like just a very like makeup centric and also like a full face. Like I was just like, how do people do this shit? And I used to do makeup and I feel like now I get my makeup done a lot. So I'm like, I don't have any skills anymore. So I'm like, I need to watch. And
did you watch that Netflix show, the MUA, the like it was like makeup? Oh my God. It is one of the best. I think it's called Glow Up is what the show is called.
Okay.
It's one of the best shows ever. It's like it's kind of like Pawn Stars to me, which is like, I think Pawn Stars, watching it's not a good show,
right?
But the idea is genius. The production company, I think they're incredible, and I think it's one of the greatest shows of all time. But like, it's not Citizen Kane, right? Like, it's not. You're not going and you're like, oh, great camera angle.
Yes.
Glow Up is totally like that. It's basically a reality show of makeup artists, like young makeup artists that are trying to become, I don't know, real MUAs, and they like go through all these challenges of how to do stuff. And they have like people that are like TikTok influencers that are on there. Then they have people who used to work, like on TV shows, and they have like really young folks, and it's a really good show, and the judges are real good.
Okay.
There's a woman where like she was like a massive makeup person, whatever. Like she did like Madonna's makeup or whatever. But like whenever she does a good job, she always goes like, "Ding dong!" Like it's
okay. I love
you just
it.
have to watch it. And I feel like an idiot explaining it, but it's a good show. And if you like makeup stuff, definitely do that, because my wife's super into all those.
Okay.
Last thing you bought online.
Last thing I bought online. I bought a bunch of cat food, but
what about clothes?
Okay. So what's crazy is I had a goal this month that I'm not buying any clothes, accessories, or jewelry or shoes. But on January 1st, I did get on Etsy and I bought a white belt, a vintage white belt with a gold buckle and like a wool, like a cream wool sweater.
Very nice.
Again,
is Etsy your main place where you get all your gear?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I haven't heard a single store that you've mentioned. It's all been Etsy. That's great. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, I'll see. Like I said, I'll see a look or I'll think of something I want to create, and then I can just get on Etsy and just comb for hours until I find the right thing.
That honestly, I think that's a really interesting way to shop, because you're doing what. Like what a magazine would say is like, hey, here's all the looks for the season, but you're finding those looks other places and then you're just buying them like vintage. I mean, that's definitely way more sustainable.
Yeah. Damn, I'm doing a good job.
Okay. A movie or book that when someone mentions, you feel they understand you.
You know what? I think, I'm not saying this movie describes me, but it is perfect to me. And it is the movie The Lost Boys. Like it encapsulates I feel like it encapsulates every single thing that I love and every feeling I love. And especially from the second the movie starts and you see the like Santa Cruz boardwalk and just the vibe that it gives you. And then the movie like genuinely never stops going. And it's the 80s, which I love, and it's vampires.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah, I want to make sure it's not Hook that I'm looking up here. Yeah.
No. The Kiefer Sutherland, also the way that the vampires look, it's also got both the Coreys in it. Diane Wiest is just a fantastic actress. And But also on top of all that, it's like got the horror element and it's got really good like vampire kills and also the music's fantastic. It just like makes me feel so good.
How often do you rewatch it?
Probably once or twice a year.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I always
That's
like
intense.
if it's on a plane, I'll watch it. I just love the feeling it invokes in me. And it's weird because there's certain things that are always like, oh, I love this scene and I love this scene. And they're usually the ones that I loved when I was a kid. But now I can also watch as an adult and be like, there's a scene on the boardwalk where the mom is like trying to get a job at this electronics store. And the way that the electronics store looks like with like not early TVs, but like 80s TVs and like 80s tech is like so fucking cool. And yeah, just a great vibe.
Okay, this is like more of a serious question now. Like because I have the same issue too. I hated being in the 90s and 80s when I was little, right?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do certain things.
Yes.
But I would much rather be in that era now, in the age that I'm in now, where I can do things.
Totally. I mean,
why is that?
I have this feeling a lot because, okay, so there's this town in New Jersey, Wildwood, New Jersey. Have you ever been there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's like, I went there this summer. It was like, to me, it was taking a step back in time because it's like a Motel City, the boardwalk. I mean, it gave me whiffs of like
it's kind of like
Bricktown
Bricktown a little bit. Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, what would it have see, this is what I'm jealous of. If you're 18, okay, so no, this is what I wish. I wish I was, no, okay. I wanted to say, I wish I was like in my teens in the 70s. And then I was like kind of in my like 20s in the 80s and like, and then maybe even in the like late 20s, early 30s, like 90s, like Sunset Strip, like Guns N' Roses time. Like,
oh yeah, good time for sure.
But also I could futz with that a little bit because also there's like this. So that's all to say that's what I think happened in Wildwood, New Jersey. But also speaking of New Jersey, there's that whole documentary, Action Park, which is all about that really unsafe water park in New Jersey. Yeah. But again, it's like kids in the late 80s and 90s at this like totally dysfunctional water park where they were like, basically my parents, like during the summers would tell me to get out of the house from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I had to find something to do. So I would go to this like janky ass water park. I wouldn't even tell them because they don't want me to be home either. And there was like barely lifeguards, like there were no rules. It just sounded fucking awesome. And then you'd like party at the park afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, if you were like that age at the right time, it's like, I guess for me, I should have gone to more raves or something. Like that would have been like the time for me to like really feel those things. But like raves weren't that appealing to me. I would have just rather, I mean, I do wish I could have like gone to a disco club. Like, there are just all these different markers and other time periods. I wish.
It makes me wonder, what if you are actually looking for permission for you to basically be like those people that you saw on the street who were dressing like they were stuck in an era and wanted to be in that era? You can do that.
I know I can. My problem is I'm like too all over the place with like, I thought it was the 80s for me. I really was like, even a few years ago, I was like, it's definitely the 80s. Like it's something about like the early 80s that I want to be in. But now I'm like feeling it more like in the 70s. And so and then also like a lot of the shit I'm looking on at Etsy for is like old, like crew jackets from like early 90s movies or sweatshirts, like Death Becomes Her, King Ralph. I just bought like a Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, like crew jacket. Like, so I'm just a little too all over the place with, I have not figured it out. Like I want to live in the apartment in Big, it's too much.
At Soho, just go down to Soho on Green Street.
And in Dumbo, in the clock tower building, I've seen it. I've looked out. Like
it's still unoccupied.
No. It's occupied. Someone who lives up there has a kid who jumps on a trampoline like in Big. I've seen them trampolining. And I was like...
What, like when you were on the train? Because I don't know any other way to see that spot from there. Unless when you're going
from windows. Over. Yeah. You can see there.
Holy shit. I wonder if he has an arcade machine in there too.
I know. And the Midwest brain in me is like, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is too good to be true. Also knowing that's like a bajillion-dollar place, but I was like, this is good to be true. I bet he's just jumping on one of those little trampolines that like I know that my girlfriend has for like, exercise. And then I'm like, no, the ceilings in that place are big. They can handle a big trampoline. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This has been fascinating. I'm not going to lie. This is really, that's so cool. What is next for you this year? Obviously, the show comes back soon.
Yeah, the show comes back soon. I wrote a screenplay last year. I'm trying to sell that. I'm going to start writing another one this year.
Holy shit. Okay,
Yeah.
That's not nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I try to try not to be like so defined by like, you have to do this or that or this, but I'm just inspired to. So I just want to of course I want to make them and sell them. And that's my big hope. But I'm like, if I'm inspired, I just want to write too. So I want to start that. And yeah, what's really next for me, my big goals for this year, I'll say it out loud because maybe it'll help me. The Midwesterner in me.
Okay.
I'm trying to step
You need to be accountable to yourself.
Yes.
You're guilting yourself. It's okay.
Yes. I'm trying to feel more powerful and more feminine. So those are the main things I'm working on this year.
Well, I will say this and encourage you. Every single person that I mentioned that I was going to talk with you lost their shit when they heard that you were going to come on the pod. They're like, are you kidding me? So just keep that in mind in the sense that you are, you're on TV every week to millions of people. That's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, for sure.
I think hopefully you can kind of use that as maybe some of the momentum.
Thank you.
Anyway,
take that
Heidi,
compliment.
Yeah, this was an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for chatting. It was great talking to you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Our show is produced by Blamo Media. We're edited by Amar Lal, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, do the deals, follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. And if you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can call us and leave us a message, and we'll put it in a future episode, or email us at info@blamopod.com. If you want to hang with us and join the Blam fam, visit patreon.com/Blamo, where we have tons of exclusive episodes in our amazing Slack community. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.